Well, anywhere you want. I mean, but
So many choices.
too many choices. That's the size of the sanctuary. I'm sorry. You can sit up. I would sit somewhere up front. If you want to be behind the live streaming that will be taking place over there. So if you sit behind this.
Oh, so you're live streaming all the services?
Not all of them, but this one.
Oh, okay. Well, so are those the candles we light?
Yes.
Right.
And those are the memorial sugar candles. They're much easier to light and a little more dramatic than the smaller.
That was a trouble with you.
Someone will help you. Let me show you this. I don't know if you recognize any of the people.
See, it's kind of, well, you've actually come to the area and then now know Manchester and the Seacoast.
No, I don't know the Seacoast that well anymore. But Manchester, yes. Bring up the sleeping.
Well, there aren't that many. Well, I think the synagogue.
Oh, it's going now. Okay, fine. We're sitting all set up.
Okay, where do you want us, are we sitting on the beam or are we sitting?
I'm kind of sitting, I'm doing most of the kind of following. If you want to come up a couple times, maybe you should just stay up there.
I'll just sit back, where are you sitting? Where the telly total?
Yeah, where's the telly total?
I'll sit next to you.
Okay. I will appreciate your company.
I'll leave the empty chair between us.
So you sit up there?
I guess I'm sitting up there with the other rabbi.
Oh, okay.
So, I know we've met. I'm Beth Davidson.
I'm not sure.
You look very familiar. I'm the
Really?
rabbi at TAY.
Oh, okay. I'm Helena England. Was just saying, so I live in Durham. So I haven't been here before, but.
Were you connected to the Reformed congregation?
No, just the Portsmouth Temple.
I was there a couple of times years ago.
Yeah, maybe.
You just look very familiar.
Oh, all right.
So, yeah.
Maybe I have a doppelganger somewhere.
Yeah, you never know. But also the masks.
I know. I know.
You don't recognize people without
As
them.
well, I know. Or at least I remember a couple times I thought I saw someone I knew, and then I was insecure because
I did that in Hannaford's. I walked up to somebody who I thought was somebody else and started talking, and they were giving me the
like
crazy
yes. No, exactly. Where should we sit?
Do you have these two?
I don't know. This is just the list of people who are lighting candles.
Oh, I'll get these two for you. And
Oh,
I'm
and
gonna
this-
how about if we sit around?
Okay,
I'll sit
that sounds-
on the- Oh, we're both getting up. I don't know the order.
No, well, I don't know about the order.
I'll stay right there. Here.
Here?
Yeah.
I think you want to leave it in the car. Oh, no. I didn't want to say we don't want to be in the even when I think it's not generated sometimes.
Maybe, it's over us tomorrow, it's on May 16th.
Thank you for being my It's almost a thing that was so you never do the part of the job. Yes, literally.
Yeah, up here. Have you met Kendra Stover?
I have not.
Okay, so he's gonna be a little late because he's coming up and teaching in, and I should assume that.
Yeah, not recently.
Yeah, the exhibit. I assume that you have these cards. Testing. Yes, yes. You can do the leadership. No, I need to change.
Oh, that's great.
Did you pick up any? Pick up the.
Yeah, I have the thing. Where do you want me?
Over here works.
Okay.
Oh, it's funny, both lights are out on the side. That's some nice house where you can see you better or something. Hey Jeff, both sides are out, both lights are out on this side. You can't just leave darkness unless I can turn them on. I thought he had them all. Yes, sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was it?
That's it, yeah. Yeah, traffic wasn't too bad, the other place, like, keep on Wednesdays. Yeah. Maybe Sunday for people.
Okay, I want to welcome everyone to the service. The streaming is on, I checked that, and so hopefully there are people attending who are not physically here. I do hope as you came in, you picked up 3 items that are on the table by the door. If not, I invite you to get them. One is a program so you know what's happening this evening. The second is a prayer for the people of Ukraine that we're going to read together, and therefore you just can't listen. You should have one in front of you. And lastly, in a way, we are enacting going down to Washington and going into the United States Holocaust Museum, which a number of you may have been to since it was established in 1993. If anyone doesn't have one of those little, so to speak, identity cards or passports, Iris is going to hand them out. Actually, if you want to, you obviously you'll get different people. But I think this is one of the most effective ways of kind of giving you a visceral, personal connection to someone who actually went through the horrors that we're kind of remembering this day. So whether your person is male or female, whether he or she lived or died, becomes secondary. This is one of those actual, otherwise nameless 6 million. So I'll call upon our Vice President, Noe Overlander, to share a word or two of welcome, and we begin.
Hi everyone, my name is Nori Overlander. I'm the Vice President of Temple Israel. I welcome you here today to the Hashoah Memorial Service. Thank you, Rabbi Gary Atkins, for gathering us here today. And shout out to President Dr. Josh Nathan, who could not be here today due to travel, but he is actually streaming in. So again, thank you so much for coming. I think it's really important for Temple Daf Yeshurim and Temple Israel to come together for community services and events, and I hope we could do this more often in the future. I am here to read the proclamation by the President of the United States. On Yom Hashoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and throughout this week of remembrance, we reflect on the horrors of the Holocaust, when the Nazi regime systematically murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other innocents, including Roma, Sinti, Slavs, persons with disabilities, LGBTQI+ individuals, political descendants, and many others. We stand with the Jewish people in the United States, Israel, and around the world in grieving one of the darkest chapters in history. We honor the memories of the victims. We embrace the survivors. We commit to keeping alive the promise of never again. The world must never forget the truth of what happened across Europe during the Holocaust, or forget the horrific crimes and suffering the Nazi regime inflicted on millions of innocent people. Entire families were wiped out, communities were shattered, survivors are left with agonizing memories and fading tattoos etched into their skin by the Nazis, reducing them to numbers. It is forever recorded into the history of mankind, and it is shared responsibility of us all to ensure that the Shoah is never erased from our collective memory, especially as fewer and fewer survivors remain. The truth must always be known and shared with future generations in perpetuity. I have taught my own children and grandchildren about the horrors of the Holocaust, just as my father taught me. I've taken my family to bear witness to the darkness of the Dachau concentration camps so that they could understand why we must always speak out against anti-Semitism and hatred in all of its pernicious forms. The legacy of the Holocaust must always remind us that silence in the face of such bigotry is complicity. Remembrance is our eternal duty, but remembrance without action risks becoming an empty ritual. As individuals, we must never be indifferent to human cruelty and human suffering. As nations, we must stand together across the international community against anti-Semitism, which is once rearing its ugly head around the world. We must combat other forms of hatred and educate new generations about the Holocaust. We must reject those who try to deny the Holocaust or to distort its history for their own ends. We recognize that just as the Holocaust was an act of pure anti-Semitism, so too Holocaust denial is a form of anti-Semitism. We watch with dismay as the term Nazi is deployed to make flawed historical parallels. Efforts to minimize, distort, or blur who the Nazis were and the genocide they perpetrated are a form of Holocaust denial, and in addition to insulting both the victims and survivors of the Holocaust, spread anti-Semitism. Now, therefore, I, Joseph Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim April 23rd, 4th through May 1st, 2022, as a week of observance of the days of remembrance of victims of the Holocaust, and call upon the people of the United States to observe this week and pause to remember victims and survivors of the Holocaust. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 22nd day of April, in the year of our Lord, 2022, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 246th. Joseph R. Biden Jr.
Thank you, Nori.
Thank you.
Very good writing by the president or by those who prepared it for him, whichever it is. Okay. Why are we here? Those of us who are here. Personally, I have had an abiding interest in the never-ending attempt to grasp the meaning of the Holocaust. Ever since I read Elie Wiesel's Night in the 1960s, I struggled with this. An ever-present thought is that had not my great-grandparents left their homes in Russia, Lithuania, and endured the long steerage boat travel to America, I am sadly confident that my ancestors would have been part of the unnamed martyrs of the Holocaust, and I would never have been born. So each year, I have lit memorial candles and attended or helped with memorial remembrance services. When Rabbi Davidson of TAY said that it was Temple Israel's turn to host the annual combined service, renewing after a hiatus, I could not refuse. And it has been a challenge to put it together. And I earnestly hope that you know that remembering those martyred, even if you are not aware of an immediate relative who was martyred, is an essential mitzvah. All Jews are related, and we remember the millions of non-Jews who were murdered as well. Let's continue, change the order a little bit, and light the memorial candles. We have 6 candles, traditionally symbolizing, and that's the only way they can be, 1 million of the 6 million. Everyone who has volunteered to light a candle has some personal connection, a family member perhaps. And as Rabbi Davidson calls you up and you light your candle, and if anyone has any problem with any of the clickers, I'll be there. And if you want to say who especially you're remembering, there's a microphone on the side. Rabbi Davidson.
Memory is a mitzvah, as Rabbi Atkins pointed out. And I think as we light these candles, not only are we remembering people we may not even have known, but who our people lost. I think it's also a call to each and every one of us to be the light and to combat the forces of anti-Semitism and hate, which President Biden mentioned. We invite Nori Oberlander to light the first candle.
Bubby Sonia Gasser and Zadie Sam Gasser.
Jeff Klein.
Zadie Philip Weiner.
Ruth Chevier.
You just gotta keep your finger on the trigger.
In the Fessel family, 78 people. In the Houseknecht and Roth families, 28 people. Meats are price.
That's what we have to.
Ken Cohen.
They were successful.
This is in honor of my wonderful Uncle Norbert, who died about 4 years ago at the age of 96. He was born in 1922 in Krakow, Poland, to a religious family. In 1942, the Nazis asked all the young men and able-bodied men to volunteer to go off to work for them with the promise that their mothers and children would survive. My uncle took off, and he was fortunate enough to travel through 11 concentration camps and work camps with his father, who was a kosher butcher, and his father's two brothers. So the four of them were able to go from camp to camp. Several months after Norbert was shipped off to the camps, the Nazis rounded up all the women and children in the community and sent them to a death camp. Norbert lived a wonderful life, immigrated to the United States, had a family. He wrote a book in his later years called, what was the name of the book? Sunrise at Midnight. And he was a great influence on me. So Norbert Friedman and the 50 close relatives that perished in the Holocaust.
Elena England.
It's difficult for me to account for all the people, but on both sides of my family, my father's family was completely demolished, and as was my mother's. So for all of them,
Thank you. We take your loved ones into our hearts with our own.
It's relatively not an emotional thing for me to do, to try to put together a program. It can be a very emotional thing for someone to do, to share in it and talk about memories and feelings. And Ruth generously volunteered and we give her our hearts as she shares. Right here, either place. Okay. Take it out, turn it, pull it down.
Hi, everybody. So I was born in January 1946, just the war wasn't really even completely over yet. My mother used to laugh and say that the survivors were so quick to get married that anybody could get married. You didn't have to be good looking or have anything at all. Everybody just wanted to get on with life. And that's really what I experienced about the Holocaust survivors. My father was a survivor and my mother was a survivor. And we were just surrounded with Holocaust survivors. So there's these wonderful, wonderful people with these great, yeah.
Can you talk a little louder?
Hold the microphone closer to your
It's
mouth.
hard to hear.
You won't actually hear what I have to say. Well, I really just want to say one thing, and I won't take very long. When my mother was interviewed by the Shoah Foundation, at the end, she told the stories basically of what had happened and how she had managed to not get caught and how she had managed to survive. And then at the end, the interviewer asked her if she had a message for people. And she said, "Life is good, it's worth living." And I was so proud of her for saying that, because she had a pretty severe case of post-traumatic stress. I won't say post-traumatic stress disorder, because you would have had to be crazy not to be stressed out after what she had gone through and lost her whole family. But she loved life. My mother loved good clothes and good food and good living and good friends. And she did not live completely out of the Holocaust. And I feel we really need to remember that. Just this past Monday evening, I attended Rabbi Gary's and Iris's presentation about what they had seen at the Holocaust Museum. And it's the most interesting thing to me was that they described how in an interview with a Holocaust survivor, a young boy had gone up to the lady and said to her, in a question that I thought was really almost rude, but the young boy said to her, "Do you feel guilty about surviving when you lost so many people were lost?" And she said, "I love life. If I could live forever, I'd like to live forever." And I feel that that's really very much the attitude that many of the Holocaust survivors had. And I feel that one thing that in particular helped them survive and go forward was an extreme generosity. My mother and really all her friends were open-hearted, open wallet, open caring. And I think that more than anything helped them overcome or live above and beyond the stress that they had gone through.
When I talk about new developments in Holocaust remembrance, museums and laws, and I want to only talk for a few minutes myself, what I'm trying to get across is that the Jewish community, and to some extent the larger community, is aware that the number of actual survivors is diminishing, and in a few years there won't be probably any left. So we have to teach by photographs, by recordings, by interviews, by testimony that you can show, and the Holocaust Museum does a magnificent job of doing that, the one in Washington that I mentioned. But there are others. Just the last couple of weeks, and of course this would be the time that you would announce it, the one in Orlando says it's getting a huge expansion. Boston, if you walk downtown, there's a memorial, but there's no museum. Someone this year has donated in the tens of millions of dollars to build a museum, just bought the building in these few years, I'm sure, to be able to educate the people of Boston. Governments are recognizing that there's an obligation to teach the Holocaust and genocide in schools. Even New Hampshire last year passed a law that requires education about the Holocaust starting in 8th grade. I'm not sure how they implement it yet. Maybe State Representative Jeff Savoy will share something about that later. Canada is passing a law to outlaw Holocaust denial. So we are but one small pebble in the sea of events that are taking place this week to remember, to make sure that our children have at least the opportunity to remember, to learn, to know, and to honor those who suffered, died, and so many who lived, whether they lived in whatever country they ended up, or in Eretz Israel. We've mentioned a few times that we've also remembered the millions of non-Jews who were killed by the Nazis. It's interesting that they had no compunctions about even killing their own German citizens who they felt were not appropriate. And there is genocide going on today, labeled by our president as such, we sense as such, in the Ukraine. I'm not sure how that will end up. I'm not sure what the governments of the world will do. But in our corner of the world, the one thing we can do is say a prayer. So if you hopefully picked up as you came in, a prayer of peace for the people of Ukraine, I invite you to share that prayer with me. God, our hearts are with all the people of Ukraine, its President Volodymyr Zelensky, and with our Jewish brothers and sisters in Ukraine, 200,000 souls who crouch in fear as the sound of sirens and bombs pierces the air. Synagogues once filled with songs of celebration have become makeshift shelters. Echoes of the Holocaust reverberate the memory of the 1.5 million martyred Ukrainian Jews. God, we pray that the panic in the streets of Ukraine will give way to the sound of children playing, and the sound of sirens will give way to songs of hope. We pray that the world community will unite and cause the Russian army to retreat. We pray for no more violence or bloodshed, and we pray that diplomacy will be the path to peace. Hear our prayers, God. Hear the prayers of the mothers and fathers, the prayers of the children, longing for safety. God, our shelter, bring peace. Let it rain down from the heavens like a mighty storm. Let it wash away all hatred and bloodshed. Please, God. Please, God. Amen. I invite Cantor Mark Stover to continue with the chanting of Anim Ma'amin, I believe.
Ani Mahamin, Ani Mahamin, Ani Mahamin, Behemuna Shalema, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach, Ani Mahamin, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach, Ani Mahamin, Ani Mahamin, Ani Mahamin, Ani Mahamin, Be'una Shalema, Ve'avalti Sheyitmanema, im kol ze ani mamin, im kol ze achakelo bechol yom sheyavo. Ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin.
Call upon Iris Atkins to read one of many possible readings, poems written by survivors, written by children of survivors. In this case, the poem, Any Case.
I will be reading a poem written by Maria Wisława Anna Szymborska. She was born in Poland in 1923 and lived most of her life in Krakow. She died in 2012 at the age of 88. In 1996, she received the Nobel Prize in Literature. In 2013, an award was established posthumously in honor of her legacy. Any case. It could have happened. It had to happen. It happened earlier, later, closer, farther away. It happened, but not to you. You survived because you were first. You survived because you were last, because alone, because the others, because on the left, because on the right, because it was raining, because it was sunny, because a shadow fell. Luckily, there was a forest. Luckily, there were no trees. Luckily, a rail, a hook, a beam, a break, a frame, a turn, an inch, a second. Luckily, a straw was floating on the water. Thanks to, thus, in spite of, and yet. What would have happened if a hand, a leg, one step, a hair away? So you are here, straight from that moment, still suspended. The net's mesh was tight, but you, through the mesh, I can't stop wondering at it. Can't be silent enough. Listen how quickly your heart is beating in me.
Call upon Cantor Stober again to sing the song of the Partisans. We are only now starting to realize the extent of Jewish resistance. At first, no one wrote about it. At first, no one knew to read their memoirs. At first, there possibly were not memoirs, but now we know. And so we honor those who did not go to their death like sheep. And the horrible description that was first written in the 1960s, but who resisted.
soll nie kein Molas du Geistem letzten Weg, Kosch Himmeln Leine verstellen Loyalität, Kommen wird noch unser Ausgebende Show, es wird ab Hochtan unser Trotz mehr sein und oh. Kommen wird noch unser Ausgebende Show, es wird ab Hochtan unser Trotz mehr sein und oh. Von grimmen Palmenland bis weiten Land für Schnee, wir kommen on mit unser Heid, mit unser Weg, und wo gefallen ist als Spritz von unser Blut, spratzen wird durch unser Bura, unser Mut, und wo gefallen ist als Spritz von unser Blut, spratzen wird durch unser Bura, unser Mut. Wenn sie morgen losen, war Gilden Huts dem Heid, und der Nechten wird verschwitten mit dem Feind, nur heute versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Ohr, wie Aparol zum Gehen durchs Licht von Tor zu Tor. Nur heute versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Ohr, wie Aparol zum Gehen durchs Licht von Tor zu Tor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Sie ist nicht von Little Foon und Vogel läuft der frei. Das Holz auf Hoch zu wischen, fallende dicke Band. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das Holz auf Hoch zu wischen, fallende dicke Band. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. So lieb kein Molas, du gehst keinen letzten Weg. Kosch Himmeln Leien, verstellen Loyalität. Kommen lob unser Euge, Wesket, Oiske, Benke, Show. Es wird ab Hochten unser Trot mehr sein in Tod. Kommen wird noch unser Oiske, Benke, Show. Es wird ab Hochten unser Trot bis einen Tod.
Call upon Dr. Jeffrey Salloway to share some words. I'm not quite sure if the description in the program will match what he's going to say. I've learned that already from Jeffrey, so we'll see how it goes. Not going anywhere.
Kendrick Stover, thank you so much for that. The Partisan League happens to speak to me. If any of you have not had the opportunity to see the film Defiance, I recommend it totally. It is the story of the Bielski brothers who were partisans fighting against the Nazis. In the middle of the film, this is a little hard to forget. In the middle of the film, a group of escapees joined the Bielski brothers. They managed to escape from a village called Lida in what was then Lithuania, it's now Belarus. And they are led by a young man of no particular skills, and his name was Yanko Mezzotint. The reason that this speaks to me is that Yanko Mezzotint was named for his grandfather, who was my grandmother's father. And his name, Michael Mezzotint, is my name as well. I am named for the same man. It speaks to me. So, well, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you all for being present. Our biblical heroes answered God's call with a single word. He named it. I am present. Each of you has spoken Hineni in being here tonight. So I'm Jeff Salloway. Yaakov Ben Yonah Vikittel, Yanko, as I am here with my beloved Jennifer, Chedi Batzi Hirsch Berivka, sitting here in one of the front rows. So I'm your servant in the New Hampshire House of Representatives. And it gives me pause to realize that we observe Yom HaShoah in the three dimensions of time as we know them, past, present, and future, as we're granted the ability to see them. So Yom HaShoah calls us from our past. It's a day of deep and troubling remembrance. It's embedded in our history, chronicled, memorialized, a reminder of who we have been and how history drives us in our mission as Jews. It would be presumptuous of me to speak of that past. I am silent before the eloquent laments of Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi and Hannah Arendt and so many others. I have no new words that might comfort or dispel the pain of those memories. I live in the present. We're required to consider Yom HaShoah in our present. How then do we say Hineni today in the shadow of our history? As Rabbi Atkins points out, we are rich in our remembrances. Here in New Hampshire, we're blessed with the Cohen Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Keene State College. This is a generous gift of the Cohen family. It's a continuing resource for lectures, events, observances, and it is ours. In Boston, we have the Holocaust Memorial in Quincy Market. In New York, we have the Jewish Museum. In Washington, we have the Holocaust Museum. In Israel, we have Yad Vashem. Surely, we have buildings, we have exhibits, we have programs, we are rich. In 2021, your state legislature passed House Bill 1135, mandating for our public school students, beginning in grade 8, knowledge of the Holocaust and knowledge of genocide, so that we as Jews can push the message forward to protect other peoples. That bill requires instruction in how national, ethnic, racial, or religious hatred, discrimination have evolved in the past and can evolve into genocide and mass violence, such as the Holocaust, and how our children must learn to prevent the evolution of these practices. That bill mandates April as Genocide Awareness Month. The governor must declare every April as Genocide Awareness Month. It creates a commission on Holocaust and genocide education to study the best practices for teaching students how intolerance, bigotry, anti-Semitism, national, ethnic, racial, or religious hatred and discrimination have evolved in the past and can evolve into mass violence and genocide, such as the Holocaust in the future. And we need to thank your House of Representatives for standing up and saying, Hineni. We also have our deficits. We also have our failings. In 2021, the same year the House Bill 1135 passed, 2 members of the New Hampshire House posted on their social media obvious anti-Semitic materials. They both came from the same party, and each of them, when confronted, claimed ignorance of the true content. About a year later, a member of the other party posted anti-Zionist materials suggesting a genocide of Jews in Israel. a group of 10 Jewish legislators called upon both parties to discipline these representatives. And only under intense, confrontive, persistent pressure from these 10 did the two major parties act to discipline these representatives. Only several weeks ago, an anti-Zionist motion was made in the House of Representatives. It came to the floor very late in the day. We were all very tired, and frankly, we were dispirited. We wanted to go home. After lengthy debate, a single Republican legislator, I must name her because she is such a hero. Her name is Judy Aaron, Honorable Judy Aaron, a Jewish woman, was asked for the floor. She was small, perhaps frail, but she began to speak. She spoke before the House of her pride in her Judaism. She told of her family who lived in Israel. She spoke of those family members as a remnant of those of her relatives who had perished in the ovens of Auschwitz. Tears ran down her face as she pleaded for, as she demanded respect for Judaism, appreciation of Israel, prevention of genocide in all its forms. When she ended, one half of your House violated protocol. They abandoned the practice of silence no matter what, and they stood in roaring applause for the Honorable Judy Aaron. It was not my delegation that stood in applaud. Our present is mixed. We are rich, but we are not yet completely safe. So what then do we foresee for our future? An admonition, if you will. Thank you for your presence tonight. Know that you are needed. Your voice, your vote, your support needs to cry out loud, Hineni. For without you, well, you understand. Now, will you bear with me, please, for a minute more and permit me a tale? I promise it will be worth your while. A number of years ago, I visited an art studio in Taos, New Mexico. The artist was named Jeffrey Lasco, and he was quite talented. I took to his work, but there was one item hung in a corner on the wall that drew my attention. It was a print from a copper etching. It's called a Mezzotint. And it was entitled Provisional Existence. And I have it here this evening. Representative Klein Knight, welcome. This is one of the heroes of the 10 legislators who spoke up in the House. Welcome.
Rabbi Atkins, could you give me this, please? And I'm going to ask you about the envelope, please. I'm going to ask you to say the addition.
So I have that Mezzotint here. Now, in this picture, which I hope you're all going to get to see, there were legions of men standing shoulder to shoulder, but for one man. That man wears a different jacket and seems at once to be within the crowd and separate from it. There's a story that goes with the Mezzotint. The artist explained that his father had been a soldier in World War II. He had helped to liberate the camps. He could not, through the course of most of his life, speak about what he saw, even to his son. Then near the end of his life, He sat with the artist and tried to put into words what he had seen and what it meant. Jeffrey Lasco himself found no words, but he was an artist and he was able to craft an etched copper plate and a single print that captured his father's memory. As I saw that print, I knew what it said. He and I spoke at length about his father, the pictures that his father must have carried in his mind, and now his son's efforts to somehow create an image to honor his father. But still there were no words. We parted as friends, and some months later, I received a large package in the mail. It was the print, and the artist sent a note. He said this was not a print that he could sell, nor was he the proper steward for it. I, it seemed, was the only one who had ever understood immediately its meaning. And please, he said, please find a proper home for it. Now, Jennifer and I have long pondered that responsibility. I've had the message for him for quite a while. Within the print stands a singular man, and he has a message to be remembered. And here in this congregation, you have such a man. He is your rabbi, Rabbi Atkins. Your rabbi served our country, bringing spiritual comfort to our military. He served the state of Israel in its defense, and he has brought his wisdom, his knowledge, and his leadership to Jewish communities here, and he has been your spiritual leader here at Temple Israel in Manchester. So Jennifer and I would like to present this picture to the Temple Israel family as a permanent reminder of the contributions of Rabbi Atkins. I just want to read to you what it says on the back. It says, this print, Provisional Existence, a testament to heroism by the artist Jeffrey Lasco, is presented to Temple Israel of Manchester, New Hampshire, to honor Rabbi Gary Atkins. This gift is presented on Yom Hashoah, the 27th day of Nisan, 5782, the 27th of April, 2022, by Jennifer Beard and Jeffrey Sallow. We offer this in deep appreciation of Rabbi Atkins and the warmth and welcome of Temple Israel. Thank you very much for listening.
Wait a minute. You know, he said he had a surprise. I didn't know what the surprise would be, and I'm intensely moved. But it's not my place to accept. Happily, we have a vice president of the congregation who will make the commitment to accept it, and then has to figure out where to hang it. So Nori, come on up. You can be as surprised as I am.
You want Nori up there?
Yes, I said, Nori, please come up. How are you good at impromptu talks?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'll try. Thank you so much. Wow. Rabbi Gary has been such an asset to this temple and an asset to my life personally. So of course, if Jeff Holloway is going to present it to you, we would like to all present it to you. Well deserved. We love you, Rabbi Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do me a favor, take it out and put it on the table in the back.
Sure.
Okay. As much as we hear words, we also hear prayers. We feel a meaning in saying prayers, and we hope from the depths of our souls that our prayers are heard by the souls of all who came before us, and however we conceptualize it, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So let me call upon Rabbi Beth Davison to lead us in the memorial prayer, and please rise as able.
El Malei Rachamim, Shechem Ramim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechana Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah, Im Kedoshim Otorim Zohar HaRikim Masirim, Et Nishmot Achenu V'Achiotenu, Shenehergu B'Shem Nishchatu V'Shem Nisrafu, Agetaot U'Machanot, Hashmada, Ba'avur, Sha'anu, Nodrim, L'Kayim, Et Zichram, L'Dor Vador, U'Netzach, Netzachim. Ba'al HaRachamim, Yishtarem, B'Seder, Kanafav, L'Olamim, Ba'itzur, B'itzur, HaChaim, Et Nishmatam, Tehem. Adonai Hu Nachalatam, V'Yanuchu, B'Shalom, Amish Chavam, V'Nomar, Amen. The words of poet Alvin Sullivan, Creator of all, source and shelter, grant a perfect rest under your tabernacle of peace to those who perished in the Holocaust. Our fathers and mothers, our sisters and brothers, our rabbis and teachers, our neighbors and children, the named and unnamed, whose lives were cut off by brutal, vicious, cunning, and calculated violence. May they find peace in the world to come. Remember the survivors who have since passed away, and the virtues of our people who died at the hand of malice in every generation. We remember the works of their hands and the messages of their hearts. Bless the defenders of Israel with safety and strength, and the righteous of all nations who provide protection, shelter, and comfort to the Jewish people. Let their deeds be a source of favor in heaven and healing on earth. Put an end to anger, hatred, and fear, and lead us to a time when no one will suffer at the hand of another, speedily in our days. May the memories of all who faced these horrors be sanctified with joy and love. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, a living blessing in our midst. And together let us say, Amen.
Rabbi Davison mentioned the state of Israel, which has, in its 75 years or so, kind of been a haven to the survivors of the Holocaust, and then the example of a renewed Israel to the world. So let us, as we draw to the conclusion of our service, say a prayer for Medinat Yisrael. I will chant it in Hebrew and then ask Jennifer Beard to come up and read it to all of us in English. Avinu, Avinu, Asher b'shamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Avinu, Avinu, Asher b'shamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Barech, Barech, Medinat Yisrael, Reshet Simchat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha v'Yavrach Aznecha, Uvros Aleha Sukan Shlomecha. Avinu, Avinu, Asher b'shamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Avinu, Avinu, Asher b'shamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Ushloch orcha v'yamecha, v'roshei hasarecha v'yoatzecha, V'kavnei b'yitzakova, b'yitzakova milvanecha. Avinu, Avinu, Sheva Shamayim, so Yisrael v'Yolam. Avinu, Avinu, Sheva Shamayim, so Yisrael v'Yolam. Chazek, 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 Yed Yedim Yer Koshenu, V'Anchileinu En Yeshua, V'Yeter Nitzachon Te'atrein. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, so Yisrael v'Yolam. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, so Yisrael v'Yolam. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam le'yoshveha. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, simchat olam le'yoshveha. V'nomar Amen.
Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, Rock and Redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say,
Amen. On Yom Kippur, we have a special Holocaust Kaddish that we say in the Martyrology, and we intersperse the words of Kaddish with the names of camps, places where Jews have been martyred. You don't have the book in front of you, so as Camp Christopher recites the words of the Kaddish, we will intersperse with the names of the places I mentioned. And since you don't have it, I will say it and then ask you to recite it after me, so we will kind of do it twice. Oh, 566.
Yitzchak,
Kishinev,
Yitzchak,
Warsaw,
Shnei Rabbah,
Auschwitz,
Yalmad Yigraf
Dachau,
Yamlit Malkutei,
Buchenwald,
V'chayechonim Yomechon,
Babi Yar,
V'chayei B'chol Beit Yisrael,
Baghdad,
V'adalav Yisman Karir,
Hebron,
Yihromein,
Yehei Shem Elom V'Varach Elom V'Meil Mayor,
Yiparach Yishtabach,
Kafar Etzion,
Yipar Yithroma,
Mayans,
Yinaseh V'yitadal,
terrorism,
V'yitalav Yitadal,
Treblinka,
Shnei Kudusha, V'yitkum,
Bergen-Belsen,
Leila,
Vilna,
Nipo Berchata V'shirata,
Busha,
Tishbachata V'nechamata,
Masada,
Amirami Alma,
Jerusalem.
V'yimru Amen.
Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya B'chayim Aleinu Ve'akol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom V'imrama Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'akol Yisrael V'imru Amen. I'm not one for formalistic blessings, but I feel that this is probably one of the most special and holy services of the year, and you should be blessed for your sharing in it. Baruchim, Baruch Atem B'Vorachem, Baruch Atem B'Seitechem. Blessed are you in your coming, blessed may you be in your leaving,
And may we all remember, and may we all do our part to make sure, as much as possible, genocide does not happen again. Thank you and good evening.
Wait, come back. Again, he's not saying, I'm saying to the goodbye. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that too. When I came, it was not already, so I had instructions.
Yeah, but it's better if we stop it on this. I just did that.
After all of the worry is over, they ask the person how you're doing and how you're gonna have time to really, maybe.